guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A video. This is season 8, episode 35. Our first set of questions this week are kind of paired to each other. So Just Play asks any tips on how to get better gear items, and then Sinemac Streams Pigman says, I actually have a question that I've been grilling over for a while. If you grind to open gear packs constantly, is it worth it to fuse to full on low-level gear, such as combat training and force field device, for the sole purpose of getting more shards back from shattering? Long-term or short-term?
Yeah, they're definitely similar questions, both to do with gear, but they're not the same.
So it's figuring out what to do with gear.
And I think if you frame the question as, how do you get more stuff that's going to be useful to you in fights? Mm-hmm. For the first one, on how to get better gear items, because I think it's relatively simple. There's a limited number, say, of the really best gears.
Yeah.
And it's pretty clear where you're going to get them. For people who don't know, Survivor gives you all the different gear sets. Razagul's Scimitar is in the gear locker.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Multiplayer rewards have lots of great gears.
Yeah.
And the nth metal packs also do, which we'll get into question later on.
Yeah. So, Survivor is the only one that you can really grind. I guess Survivor and Gear Locker, right? Survivor is the only place that you can grind for specific good high-level gears, right? Because with Gear Locker, it's just kind of random luck. And with multiplayer, you can only do it in the weeks that it's actually around. You don't have a lot of control. You can't, bring in a specific multiplayer reward. Right. And then the second part of the question, I guess it's a whole separate question, is, how to make the most of maxing out your stuff, how to get the best gear.
I do want to point out, too, that the rankings, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5 stars, they're mostly right. They're mostly relatively right. But there's going to be some 2.5 star gears and 3.5 star gears that might be more useful to your team than some of the 4.5 star gears that you might already have in your collection. Mm-hmm. There's some 4.5 star gears, absolutely, 100%, the best of the best. But then there's some 3.5 star and 2.5 star gears that you would, again, depending on how you load out your team, you would rather have those.
Yeah.
And I guess from the point of view of functional, like how much benefit in a fight do you get from them?
Yeah, because you've done some math.
I have, and the math has to do with the shards. But from so we can get into the qualitative and the quantitative. So the qualitative part is, if these are gears that you want to use, if these are gears that are part of your team strategy, you need to definitely evolve them. You want to get that extra ability that comes with evolving a gear, because I think all of them have one extra ability when you evolve it.
Yeah.
And then you fuse it. You could fuse it up to 10. But if you fuse it, there's a sweet spot. I think if you fuse it up to 7 or 8 after the evolution.
Yeah.
The last few fusions cost a buttload of credits and shards, and oftentimes it's just the benefit you get in a fight is not worth it. So for the 3.5 and 4.5 star gears, and I want to point, I really want to see if we can make people adopt this nomenclature.
I don't think we can.
It's not. I mean, it's probably too late, but it makes so much more sense, because the only thing that's not unclear or ambiguous what you're doing is when you say something is a 1-star gear or something is a 5-star gear.
Yeah.
Because 1-star gear means it's unevolved. 5-star gear means it's a 4-star gear that's been evolved. But anytime you say 2, 3, or 4, it's ambiguous, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the 1.5 means it starts off as 1, becomes 2.
Yeah.
And, so on. So the 4.5-star gear is a 4-star gear that becomes a 5-star gear.
Yeah. So your point of maxing out to 7 or 8 instead of, fully maxing it out, that's only until the point that you have all of your gears that are in your regular rotation, all up to that point, and that's when you fully max them out. So if you theoretically, the lowest number of gears that you would want to get to that point before you max out any one would be 9, right? Which is the sort of set that you'd have for your best team. But then practically you might have more than that, so you might get 10, 11, 12, whatever.
Yeah, it actually occurs to me maybe that in addition to that, besides that one condition for deciding when to max out your gears, you should also have already maxed out the lower gears, and that's where it gets interesting. So if you max out gears, you get more crystals back.
Yeah.
And from
more shards, I think.
Sorry, more shards back. You're right. I was just the nomenclature. In my mind,
It's
I'm
okay.
picturing these little crystals.
Yeah, they are shards of crystals.
Right.
So
From an intuitive point of view, if you play long enough, absolutely the payoff is going to be worth it because it's a fixed amount that it's going to cost you, but it's unlimited the payback. Yeah. So the question becomes, well, how long do you have to keep on playing to make it worth it? And it's not that clear cut, but you get a sense of it if you do some of the math. So every 1-star gear, in order to make it a 2-star gear, so every 1.5-star gear, when it's bare bones, you just get your first copy. It takes, and the wiki for Injustice Mobile is a great resource. It takes 345,000 power credits to max out 1.5-star gear.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the number of crystals you need are a combination. You need you don't need a purple. You typically need all the other colors, but it could be 64 of one, 64 of another, and then one of the last one.
Yeah. Or
it could be 138 of one and then one of the other two.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you shatter one of those 1.5-star gears, so basically when it's 1, you get 4 shards back. You get 2 and 2, or I think 4 of the one that takes the most, right?
Yeah.
And when it's max evolved and fused, you get the 4 starter shards that you normally would. And I shattered a bunch because it's supposed to be, and it is a little bit random how much you get back.
Yeah.
And I shattered 8 copies of 1 gear, and with that testing, on average, there were 13 more shards on top of the 4.
Yeah.
So
17 shards versus 4 shards on average.
Right. So you get the type of shards that you put in. So again, that makes the math a little bit simpler. Your investment pays off, and you come out ahead on average when you've shattered 10 copies.
Mm-hmm.
So you need the 13. You get 8, and there's 140. So actually, probably 9 copies. And because the 1.5-star gears are the most common, mm-hmm. and if you're grinding enough, and you really get a sense of this when you're playing for a while, and the number of packs you open, and you're frustrated by how many of the gears that you want that you don't get, and how many gears that you've had a ton of copies, it adds up pretty fast. Yeah. And I think I don't think it's that controversial to say that if you are in it for the long haul, you're going to be playing for and grinding significantly for, say, a couple months, 100% it pays off to max out those gears for the cost that you're putting into max evolve and fuse them.
You end up getting way more shards in the long term.
And that's even if you don't play with them. Mm-hmm. But there are gears that are good no matter what. I think you mentioned it feels like very recently. Demon Blade is absolutely great for your Special 2 specialist because it is the only gear, no matter how good the gears are, that both gives you a crit chance boost and a boosted damage to Special 2. Mm-hmm. Nothing else does. So even back in the day when we had a bunch of other gears, when we were running our Ares team, Demon Blade was one of the gears.
Yeah.
And then there's some basic damage gears, like Mark of Lady Shiva, and I think I want to say Combat Gloves that both boost basic damage and the crit chance of basic damage. So that until you've got your the 3.5-star gears that do the crit chance and the basic damage boost, those are great gears to actually use. You get the side benefit of every extra copy you get when you shatter it. You get more shards for having maxed it out. Mm-hmm. Totally worth it. The math doesn't take long to really pay off.
And so the real question is really not if it's worth it for the shards, but if it's worth it for the credits. And so I think the only time that it's not really worth it for the credits is if you don't have enough of a roster built up that you need to be spending that money on
warm bodies.
Yeah, on characters instead. But I think pretty quickly you get to that point. And at that point, I think what's better is to hold on to your extra copies of your gear. Because if you're still collecting, enough characters to have your roster built up enough, you probably don't super need great gear yet.
Right.
It's just a little bit of picking what order you spend your stuff in and picking whether or not you hold on to gear or shatter it. And I think as a general rule of thumb, for your lower star gear, probably hold on to it until you've maxed out. Obviously, you're going to have to shatter something to get those shards.
Yeah. But if you're playing a bunch of sort of dabbling in everything, if you play enough Survivor, maybe you'll pick up the shards that you need.
That's true.
And they don't increase in value if you hold on to them, right? As opposed to the gears you get, they increase in value if you hold on to them until you've actually fused and maxed them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you also have to balance that against, having better gear and having easier fights, doing things more efficiently, instead of sitting on stuff and doing stuff way slower. So it's a bit of a hard balance, but that's our sort of general guide.
You know what? Where that would actually be helpful to you is that at the beginning, especially if you're not sure which of your really bad gears, your cheap gears to max out, hold on to them. You'll accumulate just from randomness a bunch more of one than another, and then that's the one you max out, the one that you got a ton of copies of. Because then, let's say you play long enough, you get 20 copies of something, max that one out.
Yeah, and then shatter the other ones to get the materials to max it out. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so there we go.
Can I point out too? Sinemac.
Yeah.
Sinemac streams Pigman, also known as Sinemac, is a new supporter on Patreon, which is kind of cool. And they had a question for us that was not in our regular YouTube channel, but came through the messages on Patreon.
Yeah, so, thanks so much. We're always surprised when we get new Patreon supporters. We appreciate you very, very much. And their question from Patreon is, I found some sort of exploit to place gear on multiple characters. I'm still trying to figure out how, but I have a picture of my team with 2 Razagul Scimitar's. Is there any way to send it? So that's, sort of a question. And we do have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, and it's surprisingly, it's not that new. There was a point where when we were experimenting, so a lot of the stuff that we talk about, it's not because we are really, really smart. It's not like we have access to the code. It's because we've done a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Some smarter than others.
And people have also told us about stuff. People
Right.
come to us.
Right.
With stuff exactly like this.
But we still test it. Like when people tell us, and if we're going to stand by it, then we test it ourselves to make sure it's reproduced. This is science. People, this is science. So, when there's a study out, it's not just that they have a study to show that happened. In real science, other people have to reproduce it in similar conditions. Yeah. So when something happens and it's something bad, I remember there used to be something called the death glitch.
Yeah.
And it was basically overselling something.
Yeah.
And there was a channel that got really lots of views on a video by showing you how you could oversell something. And what they didn't tell you was that once you've oversold it, you've basically corrupted your account. And the next time you get the thing that you oversold,
it freezes you out.
Right. And that's when, if people did it with, say, their bronze characters, then you had your daily reward bronze characters, it would mess up their game. It would lock them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, essentially it was a death glitch, but
it could literally make your account unusable. If it was for like a pack reward, right? You just couldn't get that reward, which is almost like an automatic airplane like refund glitch.
Yeah.
But if it was for daily rewards, you could literally like make your account fully unusable.
Yeah. So the reason why I brought that up is because this was being able to put multiple copies of gear on either the same character or on different characters on the same team. It's one of those things that you can actually have happen with account bleeding. And at one point when we were messing around a lot more with swapping quickly in and out of accounts, and we'd see some account bleeding, and then we tested enough to realize what kind of problems you'd have and to know that it was bad. It was a bad thing to happen, and it was something you'd want to avoid. We were able to actually get exactly that to happen with more than one copy of a gear on characters. And I got to tell you, you don't want to do that.
Yeah. So, when there's something that was blatantly obvious that you're not supposed to be able to do, when you take that into online play at all, is where you can potentially run into issues, because there's a risk of being banned.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's the kind of thing that automatically triggers a ban, as far as we're aware. And the sort of there's good news and bad news. Right. If you're the person who's doing it, right? And so the good news is that Warner Brothers support seems to be pretty inactive, right? And then the bad news is that Warner Brothers support is inactive, so if people are hacking or cheating in other ways, that you're less likely to get it picked up on.
But you never know. Like recently, they cleared the leaderboards of all the hackers.
Yeah.
So there's somebody there, and I guess it depends on how lucky you feel. If this is something you want to try, that if they're not paying attention to what you're doing, or if they're not paying attention to complaints, you probably get away with it. But I think this is the kind of thing that people are probably more motivated to complain. Hey, listen, if you had 3 copies of the protective amulet, or what's that? I haven't used 1.5 star gears for so long. If you had 3 copies of the, I'm thinking of that little white box with the red cross on it. That's like for health. Anyways, my mind is totally blown.
I don't remember gear names except for the big ones.
That's true, me too.
Or the ones that we use, like Mark of Lady Shiva.
Yeah. But, nobody would complain if you had 3 copies. They'd think you were dumb. Or maybe they would. But then I remember, this is a historical kind of thing. I remember there was somebody who was very prominent and well-known in the official Warner Brothers forums. Yeah. And he got his account suspended because there were a bunch of people who did not like the strong anti-cheating, anti-hacking stance that he'd taken, and people reported him. He got his account suspended. And again, this was back in the day when people were able to get responses out of Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. So eventually, I think he got his account unsuspended, but it's not the kind of risk. Remember when there used to be, like, I think when Tanty Totem first came out, you would see teams where all 3 characters would have Tanty Totem on them. Yeah. And some would have more than one. Mm-hmm. And that was really, like,
ridiculous.
Wild. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
So we generally don't recommend this. It's interesting, and the real problem with this is that it does start to hew into the territory of things that you're not supposed to be able to do in the game, period. Yeah. Where a lot of the glitches that we look at are ways of speeding up the rate that you can get rewards or doing other things, right? Right. But working within sort of the, like, mechanical limitations of the game. Right? Even if we're not working within, like, their like, timer stuff, right? Right. But this is sort of going out of the realm of what you're supposed to even be able to technically do in the game to doing something that is impossible. Right. And that's the easiest way of getting caught cheating, is doing something which is visually clear to somebody who's looking at it from an external perspective that what you've done is impossible.
Because what was funny was that some of the stuff people were getting reported for that they thought was cheating was totally legitimate. Like, if you've been playing long enough. We had a question, I think, about, it was a recent comment about our nth medal on this account. And sure, there's no glitch, but then how did they have 30,000?
Yeah, so
it's because we play like crazy.
From Abbas Mohammed Al-Karsi.
Does that be? Oh, okay.
And they say there is no credit glitch in brackets, but they have 32,000 nth medal, lol.
Yeah, so the thing is, when you've been, maybe it's a different mentality. We've been playing long enough now that we have a clear idea of what our goals are. And so, to me, the main goal of out of all the metal characters to spend nth medal was on Catwoman, Batman Ninja Catwoman. And once we got our copies of her to get her to Elite 3, nothing else was really a priority. I mean, if we're going to be using the refund glitch to try to get the most out of the nth medal pack, then you want to, if you don't want to completely waste your time and buy 1 pack at a time and then refund it, and 1 pack at a time and refund it, you want to buy a handful. And you can increase your chances by picking a small enough number that you're not likely to get a medal, but a big enough number that you're not wasting so much time on just 1 roll of the die. Mm-hmm.
There's sort of a sweet spot, because if you're buying 100 packs and then resetting, if you don't get any medal characters, obviously you're going to get one every time, and then there's no point. But if you're doing it, with 1, then most of the time you're not going to get any, and you're going to spend a huge amount of time just resetting over and over again. Yeah. And I guess the sweet spot for everyone is based off of how many resets you want to do. Yeah, and you just have to sort of figure out how many resets on average you want to do for an nth medal character, and then work backwards and figure out how many packs you need to open to make it, on average that number of resets. Right. So
let's say, for example, you only want 1 medal character. Yeah. And there's a 10% chance that you want. I'm pulling numbers out of my bum. there's not a lot of numbers there. You want to make sure that the number of packs you open is still less than the likelihood that you're going to get one.
Yeah.
So that way, if you get one, great, it's a bonus. But if you don't, you refund it. So what you're doing is you're really boosting up your odds. If you do it in a way where your risk or your chance of getting one is too high, you're basically wasting your time and wasting your credits. Because you're just going to get, like you said, the normal distribution.
Yeah, you're not really... The reset glitch isn't actually doing you any favors. It's not actually helping you out at all.
Yeah. So the higher the chance, the fewer the packs you want to open. The lower the chance, you want to open more packs, but you still want to keep it a nice low number.
But anyways, that's not really what the question's about.
What was the question?
The question was just...
I can't remember.
It was the 2 gear, and then we hopped over to the big nth metal. But yeah, so the point is that we're sitting on a bunch of nth metal because we can. And just because we don't have a lot of motivation to spend on things, it's interesting because when they sort of kept adding things that were nearly impossible to max out, there was a certain point, and when, we recognized that for online play, that having people not maxed out was better than having people maxed out. There was a real sort of shift in perspective from trying to get everybody and get everybody all as high as they can go to trying to find the sweet spot for us personally for what made the game easiest, and then accumulating resources so that we had the option to sort of max whoever we wanted out, do whatever we wanted to if we ever decided to pull somebody out.
The team on the screen is a perfect example of this because that in the elite crystal for the Phantom Zone, there are some tasks where you just have to do something multiple times, and being a higher level doesn't actually help you. And there's some things where you have to do an amount of damage or amount of health steal or amount of damage over time, where being higher level does help you. But all those tasks, those jobs like basic damage, health steal, or damage over time, those 3, with this team, we can typically do it in one fight anyways. So there's no advantage getting higher than this level. It's getting close to the max battle points, if not max battle points each time. So there's no advantage there. And so it's actually better off. Although I will say, because we don't see Astro Harness every time, if we went higher, we'd have a better chance on the 195 specials. Because then we'd see the Astro Harness be able to do a bunch of specials with Wonder Woman during their invulnerabilities. But that's really it. And,
that's because all the systems in the game weren't actually designed for... needing you to have the absolute best stats in the game. Right? So the Phantom Zone challenges were designed to be playable at sort of mid-level, right? And same with online. Online was designed to be played at what used to be a higher level, right? The sort of range of battle points is now, I think, like sort of upper middle.
Yeah, and even taking into account all the different levels of crystals, right? So that the elite crystal, you can still do it with a pretty decent team, and you could really outclass the final character that you fight for the crystal if you jacked up this team even higher to like Elite 7 or even Elite 10. Not necessary.
I think that's the one problem with power creep, and I mean, it's not as much of a problem if they're not putting new stuff in. But like doing metal characters that are just supposed to be everybody's just slightly better, is that there's no reward built into the system anymore about having better guys. Right? Getting better and better guys made sense in single player. Getting better and better guys made sense to a point in multiplayer. Right? But after a certain point, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't matter at all to have higher stats. And so, what's cool is actually characters that are fun, characters that are interesting, and characters that change. So, higher stats aren't better. Characters that
are
change,
passive.
Yeah, characters that change the way that you engage with them, or the ways that you engage with, like yourself when you're playing as them, are what's actually worthwhile. And the stuff that, like, better stats isn't really worth anything. After a certain point. Yeah. So there we go. So our next comment comes from Nico Azel S, and they say, "Help! My 2 characters with promotion 10 has been demoted to promotion 9 and leveled down to 25. What happened?"
So it's an interesting variation of the question. I don't have a specific answer to this because the actual usual question is 2 characters with promotion 10 has been demoted to promotion, or has been demoted from 50 to 25, and it's kept at promotion 10. And some of them have been, the promotion is even lower.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess it's probably worth explaining something. So even though we don't cheat, even though we don't hack, we've used the services like way back when there was new content.
Yeah.
And they would have an update, and there'd be new content that would be showing up months later. We'd have somebody that we'd worked with who would get us a hacked account so we could demonstrate some of the new content before it actually came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've developed at least a working understanding of how some of the characters are. And it's in the later, like there was a huge number of updates, versions of Injustice that did not have Breakthrough.
Yeah.
Breakthrough is a relatively late addition. And before Breakthrough, there wasn't any place on your character where it would keep track of where you were allowed, how high you're allowed to go.
Mm-hmm.
So the default is 7. Well, I mean, default used to be 5, then they raised it to 7, and then there's something in each character that lets it go to either 8, 9, or 10.
Yeah.
So when that part is corrupted, when the element that tells you it's allowed to go higher than Elite 7 is messed up, then all of a sudden, if you've actually raised the level higher than 50,
mm-hmm.
you're going to screw up your game.
Yeah.
And the easiest, there were different ways that people would do this. So one of the common ways before was when people would do this, you could call it a glitch, where they would, if say a new version of the game came out, and a glitch was patched and they wanted to keep on using it, they would keep on playing with the old version on one device and come back to the new version. And if you separated it wide enough, not only could you potentially lose new characters, but if that threshold crossed over between a non-breakthrough version and a breakthrough version, you could lose the breakthrough stuff. However, the levels were still there. But then you potentially would have a level that was higher than was allowed.
Yeah.
So that was the most common way, but I think there's lots of potential other ways, right? Like if you have a count bleed and you have one game swapped out with another game in different elements, then that could screw up your count like that mm-hmm. too. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of other ways, but it really is that the count is screwed up.
Yeah, something happened.
Yeah, and I got to tell you too, if you do not want your count to be suspended, the first thing you want to do is keep all those characters that are level 25 and promotion 9 off your multiplayer team. Mm-hmm. Again, same risk of somebody reporting you. And then try to build them back up to level 50 as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Because then otherwise they look illegitimate, and somebody who's annoyed at facing your team might just be motivated enough to send a little email to Warner Brothers.
Yeah. So there we go. Our next question, which you've mentioned earlier that we were going to talk about, comes from Kron Wadhwani, and they say, I have 1600 nth metal. Should I buy 2 ultimate packs or 4 pro packs?
And this is, I guess, a variation on a question that we've answered a bunch of times before. And the answer, if we're not going to answer this directly, really comes down to the pro packs per nth metal that you're paying.
Yeah.
Better chance at an nth metal, or sorry, not nth, a better chance at a metal character.
Yeah, so pro packs are better for metal characters.
Marginally. Ultimate packs, though, better gears.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the non-metal characters are also better, too. So you get golds that are the higher level challenge golds.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, I would say that unless you're going for metal characters and nothing else, I would go for the ultimate packs. Or actually, if you've got all the characters except for nth metal, or except for metal, I keep on wanting to say nth metal.
Except for metal characters.
Then the 400 pack is better. All the gold characters and all the gears, the 400 pack is better. If there's gears that you want and some characters that you want, especially multiplayer and challenge characters, I would go for the ultimate pack.
Yeah. And I think the equation is a little bit different because if you're buying 4 pro packs, you also just get more stuff, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, more volume.
More volume of stuff. So if you care more about getting just the best stuff, the ultimate pack is better. Mm-hmm. If you care about the best stuff sort of broadly, if you only want metal characters and nothing else, then you get the pro pack. And if you're early enough in the game that you just want more sort of volume, that you just want more gears, you just want more characters, that there's that your collection is kind of small and you're looking to expand it, then Pro Pack might also be better.
Right.
Yeah. So there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Bit of a quick one. The next one comes from the Nefarious Magic Man, and they say, do you guys like MMA? And so my answer for this is very quick, no.
And my answer is yes. I actually like it. And it's not... I don't have a background in it. I think, to me, it's part of physical culture.
Yeah.
Health culture. I mean, if you watch our channel for a while, it's been a while since we've done one. We've got some workout videos, not because it has anything to do with the channel, but because, I was doing this stuff anyways. And I thought, man, we got a channel. I'm just going to stick it up.
Yeah. And it's not to say that I don't like MMA specifically. I find it a little hard to watch.
Okay, I agree with you. I think there's elements of it definitely that are hard to stomach. What I like about MMA is that I feel like it's the pinnacle of strength, flexibility, technique, endurance, all at once.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of preparation and sort of really high level expertise and ability that goes into it. And in a lot of ways, it's broader than any other sport. And there's a huge amount of uncertainty because of how much skills and the way certain skills play off against each other in opposition that go into it. But I'll agree with you that it can be really brutal sometimes and hard to watch.
Yeah. And I don't... See, I think I agree with the stuff about how much talent and effort and all that it takes. And I think there are very few other sports that explicitly involve people potentially impairing other people's abilities to continue to do them.
Yeah.
And, because I think there's a lot of sports, and I think, that's the sort of really sad reality of professional sports at the highest level, which is that you are pushing your body to its natural limits. And if you don't have a really good sense of that, or even if you do, if you just do it for long enough, being at the absolute top is going to slowly degrade your body's ability to perform in that way. But I feel like MMA, a lot of other ones, I can watch somebody being incredibly good at hockey or basketball or whatever, baseball, like any sport.
Yeah.
And it's not very obvious to me that these people are hurting themselves a little bit every time they put themselves up on the field. I guess games like football are maybe a little bit closer to watching people do bad things to themselves. And I think MMA removes that level of plausible deniability.
That's a good way of putting it. I love that.
Where I'm watching people who are very, very good at a thing, who have dedicated their lives to a thing, try their best to make each other not be able to do it anymore, on the stage. And that's not it's not exactly what they're doing.
No, it's
not.
But
I feel like I'm watching them whittle away their physical capacity.
So the word that you just used that stuck out with me the most was degrade.
Yeah.
And I think it's true with I see it now because I don't know if it's any kind of big secret, but I am definitely much older. Mm-hmm. And even in the time that since the last sort of I think physical video that we did was the max chin up weight. Mm-hmm. And last time I actually was able to reach a new personal best. Oh, and I guess our other connection to MMA is that we had a fun kind of weighted chin-up challenge with Lee Remedios, who is an MMA fighter who used to watch our channel. I don't know if he does anymore, but he had... anyways, you can look it up. It's on our channel. But in the last year and a half, I've lost intentionally about 15 pounds because I was feeling a little bit too heavy, but it's come at a bit of a cost. I've lost a bit of strength, but even more so, I think I've got some nagging injuries now I didn't have before. And I don't know how much to blame it on the weight loss and how much it was because I was working at sort of the limit of the capacity, like my body's limits. Mm-hmm. And as I get older, because I'm sort of nudging up against the boundaries of what I can do, that I'm really seeing how much trouble I'm having now. Mm-hmm.
Because as those boundaries pull back, if you don't know exactly where they are, it's easy to hurt yourself.
Right. So, everybody on the internet says they lift a lot. So in the video that we did, I was doing chin-ups with 90 pounds plus the weight of the belt and the chains. And I did 8 reps with that.
Yeah.
And I was just doing that the other day, and I had to struggle to get 6. Mm. So I know I've lost a significant amount of strength, and it's not just that I've lost the weight, because if I've lost weight, I'm actually lifting less.
Yeah.
I'm chinning up less. Should actually be a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
But, can't bench press the same amount that I used to. It's just, and part of me is thinking part of it's age, and part of me is thinking maybe I need to just gain the weight again and pack it on. But it was making me uncomfortable because my ankles are starting to ache a little bit, and skipping rope with the weight was getting a little bit harder. But it's all that kind of
and that's the other thing too, which is that these people are at the top of their sports, and if they aren't like injuring themselves. Right? There's a sort of level that you operate on where if you're exercising a lot and doing sports like that, can be actually quite healthy for you. I just think that being right at the upper echelons of most professional sports is really hard.
Right.
Like you can be like a marathon runner. You can be somebody who plays a lot of sports, right?
Right.
But I think there's a certain point where like it's just there's sort of like a ideal middle that our bodies operated in. It feels like there shouldn't be any such thing as too healthy or too good at like athleticism, but there totally is. Right? It feels almost unintuitive that this person is so good at this sport that it's hurting them a little bit.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I don't love watching MMA, and there's a bunch of other things that I'll watch people do that are probably not great for them, right? Like it doesn't hurt me to watch somebody eat more than I know is healthy for them if they're really enjoying a meal.
Competitive eating.
Well, no, I'm not talking about competitive eating. That also makes me uncomfortable.
Kobayashi and the Nathan's hot dog. That was classic. I mean, I think he's been outclassed by a lot of people, but yeah.
Watching people competitive eat also makes me uncomfortable, but
to me that's grosser than MMA.
I don't know what that does to you though, because I think like it's short term very unhealthy, obviously, to put it in you. Yeah. But I don't know what that does to you long term.
Well, I think the training that you do, if you practice with any kind of food, just packing on the calories is going to be harmful, especially the kind of calories.
Yeah.
And I think the ability to swallow, and do that, I think it's probably not nearly as bad as just what training you have to do with food to get to that point.
Yeah. Oh, I just see at that high level, that does make me really uncomfortable.
yeah, more than MMA. So do we like MMA? I do. Competitive eating, I used to a little bit more, but it just I have like a visceral reaction. I feel a little ill when I watch competitive eating now.
Yeah, I think if I'm full enough, thinking about competitive eating would make me feel unwell.
Yeah. Oh, what was that show we watched about the cheese roll?
Oh,
when we talk about high level, like that.
Is it like They're the Champions, We Are the Champions?
Something like that. It's on Netflix. It's really good. And anyways, what I want to point out, that kind of high level is actually pretty good because when you're talking a really small group, to get to that high level, even though that's pretty dangerous. Like I think the women's champion had broken a bone or something the last time she won, or the time before they were televising. And that too. But I think if you're aiming for something like that that's not as universally competed, that it's probably not nearly as bad in some ways as the ones where you really have to be right at the limit of human potential to be competitive.
It was called We Are the Champions, and there were some of them. Okay, some of them were actually hard to watch. The cheese rolling one was very good, but the
hot
capacity
pepper
for injury was worrying. And yeah, I was also thinking about the hot pepper one. That was hard to watch.
Yeah, that was actually. Yeah.
There's a lot. Right. There's a. I think,
but not the frog jumping.
Not the frog jumping. The frog jumping one was quite fun because the point where the training occurred was practicing how to make frogs jump.
Right.
Which I think doesn't actually have very much of any effect on your body.
Yeah.
I think that one's actually pretty safe. No, I think my takeaway, having thought about the different things, is that watching people do sports really well, and anything where there's sort of danger associated with it or injury risk that's over a certain level, I don't actually love.
Yeah, because it's a spectacle.
Yeah. I also just spend my time watching other stuff.
Right.
So I've had to pick, but so we're half of an MMA fan.
Yeah, and I find it, if it happens to be on free TV, it's easy to watch and not entirely pay attention, because if something happens, they replay it.
Yeah. That's the other thing, is that I don't watch cable, like, at all.
Right.
So I'm never like, what are the sports that are on?
Right.
I'm always like seeking out specific like content that I want, and it's never sports, and it's never like accidentally sports.
Right.
Because I feel like if you're flipping through TV, there might not be anything better on.
Right. It's true.
Yeah. Anyways, our next comment comes from Jeremy Frey, and they say, very insightful, you guys are the best. As for account bleeding, I too have had some experience with account bleeding. In short, I was doing the refund glitch during the Phantom Zone, thus causing account bleeding. My second account never gained any progress, but instead all my battles were glitched for about a month and a half. As for solutions, I now wait to do the refund glitch after the Phantom Zone, and do the challenge reset to reset my Phantom Zone progress. If you do get locked out of your account, or other glitches occur, reach out to Warner Brothers support. They will give you options on how to possibly fix your problem.
Yeah, I think... So here's the issue, I guess, and I'm maybe influenced too much by past history. You know, it's like investments. Past history is no guarantee of future performance. Mm-hmm. And Warner Brothers support has traditionally been relatively slow. Looking back on when they released Red Sun Green Lantern for the first time. And
they banned, like, massive amounts of people.
Who took him into multiplayer, yeah. So that was pretty bad. And it took them, I want to say a few weeks, maybe even like more than a month to fix that. And as time has gone on, they've become even less responsive. And their support is probably, again, what I've heard about is probably, again, there's a selection bias. Yeah. Where what we hear about are people complaining. But traditionally, most of the stories we get are about how Warner Brothers support is not very responsive. Mm-hmm. They don't do a lot to fix things. And if you're relying on just that, then even if they eventually help you, count on not being able to play for a few months. Yeah. And again, it could end up being years. And the people who've been credibly claiming to not cheat were told by Warner Brothers that their account was a cheating account, so they sometimes even got a response saying, yeah, we're not going to help you.
Yeah, which is very unfortunate. The other thing, I think, that we've seen anecdotally is that people who had purchased in-app purchases seem to have a better experience with Warner Brothers support.
That's true.
Which is not entirely surprising.
Yeah, it's not unfair either. I think that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, you can't blame them, because they're paying for support. And, you know, they're just trying to make money. They, you know, obviously, the only amount that they care about, like, user reviews or user experience is how that relates to them turning a profit, right? Either in the short term or long term. Because even if you're talking about, like, brand loyalty, right? That is all ultimately just related to money.
Right.
So that makes sense. But if you're contacting Warner Brothers support, you're better off if you've made an in-app purchase, I think.
Yep. For sure.
But also, don't expect very much either way.
Yeah.
So our next comment comes from Robert Patrick at Mojo, and they say, hey, BDCKR, new to the channel. I can't believe I just found you. Now I have to ask, I'm using Android 11. Will the weekly challenge mode glitch work on this Android version? Because I'd like to promote my Batman vs. Superman soups to level 7. And do I need Helium Premium or free in order to have the backup?
Batman vs. I guess that must be Dawn of Justice. Maybe I'm betting Robert's talking about Dawn of Justice Superman. Not that matters. Yeah. But I guess first thing I want to say is Helium's been great. You don't need premium. Helium, the free version, works fine. The functionality for most of it is pretty good. I think Helium Premium gives you more ability to save online in, say, like Google Drive. Yeah. And they both require you to be hooked up to your computer at some point, and neither requires you to have a
jailbroken.
What, there's an Android term for that. I can't remember now. But yeah, basically that. Not unlocked. What is that?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. It bugs me when words don't. When I can't pull the words out of the abyss that I've got in my head where all the knowledge resides. But Helium is great. But we only bought Premium actually just to support
Rooted, that's it. To support the developer, because it was only a few bucks, and we got so much use out of it when we were originally messing around more, and the chance of us screwing up our account and losing content
irrevocably was pretty high, and it saved our bacon more than a few times. So I think like the $3 or $4 was totally worth it, but you don't need to.
Yeah. This is a good opportunity to say, if you like Injustice a lot, and it's been worth a lot to you, consider buying an in-app purchase and tossing the developers a few bucks. This type of stuff does actually matter a lot more than I think like reviews do in a lot of cases, is speaking with your wallet. So we have loved Injustice over the years, and even though they're not doing content right now, right, I think we've gotten a huge amount of value, and we've bought some in-app purchases
recharges
just to support
mainly
them.
Yeah, because that, to me, that's the best part. Like it's like putting quarters into an arcade game. Like you get to play more. All the other stuff you can. It's a great free to play game. So pretty much every bit of the content you can get if you just play it long enough. Yeah,
and the way that it's set up, unless you're pretty early in the game, you're not actually even saving that much time by paying money. It's hard to buy yourself stuff that's like really, really just gonna get you stuff that you couldn't have gotten by playing otherwise.
Yeah, this is so not pay to win, and I love it for that too, among other reasons. But I really love it for that.
And obviously, if you like us a lot, you can drop us a few bucks on Patreon.
That's true too.
But we probably don't we don't need that much. Actually,
yeah, no. That's I love that there are people who support us, and I am so grateful for what they've done, because it's actually been. I mean, for practical stuff, we wouldn't have the mic that we're using right now.
Yeah,
there was a year when we were living further apart, where it would have been almost impossible without a separate mic to put out the quality that we wanted.
Yeah, we don't need the money because this is like a hobby for us. This is not like a main source of revenue for us. But I will say that there are times where we probably wouldn't have kept making the channel if it weren't for Patreon.
Yeah,
actually, there's a huge amount of motivation. It's less about the dollar amount attached to it and more about like the understanding of how much people support us.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
So yeah, anyways.
I think we got time for one more question.
One more quick one. Ram says, do you think the upcoming Injustice animated movie might bring some light to the game, or do you think it will only contribute towards Injustice 2? And I will say that the movie, I think, is going to be, if there's ever going to be content for the game, at some point, I think the movie coming out and them doing something promotional for that is probably the best shot at figuring out if they're ever going to put, like, and the amount of effort they're going to put into the game.
Yeah.
I think it'll, spill over to everything a little bit. I think, obviously, people will look to the newest stuff and the biggest stuff. So, in terms of, like, the console games, right, the Injustice movie will probably push more traffic to the new console game. Right. Same with Injustice 2 mobile game, I think. But it'll definitely put some interest, some traffic into the older stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think it would be, there's no way it can pull interest away, right? And I think it's very unlikely that, the movie will come out and not a single person will then download like this, right? The question is just how much.
Yeah, and I think the time where there was significant promotional content to include in Injustice, one, it has long gone. It's way past us. And if they're going to be putting a huge amount of energy, more than just some really superficial new content, I think it's going to be... it seems more likely they're developing and they're going to push Injustice 3.
That's true. That's actually a good point. Yeah, because both of them are at a point in their life cycle where, they'll get some support, but it won't really be the same sort of concerted thing. Because I think for games that focus on online play or sort of community, right? Because, fighting games aren't built around single player fighting against AI. They never have been, they never will be.
Right.
For games centered around that, I think really the money is when it's a thing that people are talking about, when it's like sort of in the public focus more, and there is sort of that sense of bigger sense of community surrounding it, right? And some games I think never lose that, like some of the old Street Fighters that are still in like the competitive scene, right? Where there's still people playing it because there is still that community around it. But in terms of stuff like Injustice, I don't know. I don't know for sure, but I'd imagine that there's probably not nearly as the same sort of competitive scene for a game like Injustice as there is for like, the old Street Fighter. So for them, the real sort of money and the time that it makes sense to push for it and have it in front of people's eyeballs is, you know, like right before it comes out to maybe like a year after it comes out. There's a certain amount of time after where they can still sort of pick up people, and you can go on and search for an online match, and the wait time to find one will be really fast, right? And sort of the longer that a game has been let to sit and to bleed users, I think the less compelling it is for a new player coming in. You essentially lose some of the value of it, even if the actual product that you're buying is exactly the same. And that's the same for almost any multiplayer game, right? Like a game like Overwatch, that is only multiplayer, lives and dies on its matchmaking. If there wasn't enough people for you to find a match properly, the new people coming in wouldn't stick around.
Right.
So I think you're absolutely right that people, if they're going to push something, it would be a newer product probably. But I don't know. Is Injustice 3 going to happen? I have no clue.
We do not have it in it. And that's the last fight of Last Crystal. So we'll talk it out as we we'll watch the Last Crystal, see what reward we get. Mm-hmm. But we need to say a few words. Yeah. That we like to usually say at the end.
Yeah, so a shout out to Eliza Science Studier Caton. She's working a co-op job at a pharmaceutical company and getting it done. She has been for a while. This isn't new, but, you know, I needed something to pull for this week, and I didn't have anything else specific.
Pharmaceutical company?
Yeah.
Is it a secret? What else? Like, can we hear more details or not really?
It's... I don't know. I don't want to dox her.
Okay, all right, that's true. Never mind.
Yeah, I'll say it's not like Pfizer or Moderna. So it's not one of the ones that are really in people's public perception right now.
Yeah.
But this shout-out was brought to you by chemistry. I don't know, like just the idea of it, I guess. Reactions and whatnot.
Right.
And we'd also like to give a huge thank you to the people that we've been making reference to, I think a little bit more than usual, in this episode, our lovely supporters on Patreon.
So that would be Console Peasant, Ed and Edwoon, who are supporting us at the highest tier, Last Word. Our newest patron, Sinemac, and Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier. Shawn Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, Michael DeVries, Brandon C., Irvin Ruiz, and Eddydoo supporting us at the credited level. And Chris Wolf, Scarlett Denny, Awesome Gamer 2 for 1, Pavu RS, Gavin Malott, and Isfar E at the gratitude level.
There you go. Thanks so much for your support, and we'll see you next time.
Komoda.